want to go ahead and make a short video just to get everybody on the same page and up and running with how I would go about tackling this project. And if I go over here and pull up our web courses, I just want to go through here very quickly. We're going to make a composition. We're going to be painting these shapes. Right off the bat, I want to make it very clear that these shapes should be painted, whether you're using brush or some combination of lines and brushes, and you can use your mouse or your tablet, but I want to make sure that you try to avoid using the shape tools or 3D tools. I just want you to try to mimic some of the techniques from these traditional drawings when you draw out your shapes. So what I'm mainly looking for is your understanding of these three things, right? Your lighting, your value, and form. Don't worry about over designing a complex composition. It doesn't have to be complicated. Just utilize these shapes to make something interesting and composed. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and I'll move this out of the way here. I've got a document open here in Photoshop. I'm going to use a 1920 by 1080 pixel canvas just because that's how I like to work, kind of wider in case I want to crop things down. And I'm immediately going to fill it with a mid-gray. I'm just going to fill layer 0 with about that much gray. And I'm going to change my border here to black just so that we don't have two similar colors leading into each other. Okay, so here we go, and I've got a brush. All I'm going to have open here is my brushes. I'm going to drag that out so that we can quickly see stuff. And I'm going to create a couple layers here. I don't need this. I'll keep my swatches out as well, because actually the first thing I'm going to do is take my eyedropper and grab a white, and on one of my new layers I'm going to just start drawing out some colors here that I'm going to sample. I just want to get a range of values. So here's a nice light gray. I'm going to put that above the white, and I'm going to bring the hardness up a little bit. And then a little bit of a darker, and not looking to get, completely exact here, but I want to go up a scale, right? So that I start light and I get darker as I go. Maybe this is a nice, yeah, that one would work. And then go even darker, and actually I'm going to go ahead and just use this. That one's very close. You can't see it really well because it's very close to our background, so we'll just go ahead and turn that off so you can see it. And then I'm going to go all the way up to not black, but close to black as my last color. So very rarely do I want to have, in a values project like this, you don't necessarily want to have, you could have straight white because you can dial that down, but this is as good as you need, as much as contrast as you need. So I'm going to go ahead and just clean this up a little bit. Okay, that's cool. So now I can always sample this this little um, key, for lack of a better word, gradient key to get my colors. So first thing I want to do on, and I'll call this layer the gradient swatches. Okay, on this layer, I'm going to go ahead and determine a horizon line. Now this is all going to be up to you. I am going to use black in this case because it'll just read nicely. I'm going to just pick a little bit lower than the middle of the screen. And I'm going to take my brush and drag it across like that. So here we go. I'll maybe bring it down a little bit opacity wise. Okay, so now I have a canvas to work off of. You know, if I were to think about perspective, my objects in the center are sort of at the closer to the vanishing point in the middle. Over here, these are also vanishing points off the screen. It's sort of the way you think in terms of how you compose three-dimensional objects. So if I go ahead and let's label that the horizon, and I'll create a new layer. And for the shapes, I'm just going to get my darker color and start to make outlines. So let's say I want to have a cylinder. So I do not have the greatest freehand abilities, and that's kind of why I wanted to make a video, because I want you to know that you guys don't have to have that, because that's one of the great things about this tool is it allows you to erase and draw over and erase and draw over. So it's really useful. So see, I just switched. I don't know, I should be telling you this as I do it, but if I hit E on my keyboard, it switches to the eraser tool. And then when I'm done kind of defining this as a cylinder, I'll hit the B again and draw some more detail. And now I can erase this. And just kind of try to get close to elliptical shape here. Just because we're doing a demo, I'm not going to spend a ton of time going for perfection. Okay, so that's a good cylinder. Maybe instead of duplicating my work, maybe I will have another cylinder and I'll just make it bigger. And that'll be kind of a foreground cylinder here that'll be closer to the screen, right? So closer to the camera, so to speak. And so how I did that was I just held down Alt, and if you're in the Move tool, which is this guy, V is the shortcut, I can hold down Alt and I can press down on my pen, because I'm using a Wacom tablet right now, and I can draw out a duplicate. So maybe I'll have 3 of these cylinders here. And so now we're kind of rolling and making our composition, right? So now we've got, you know, these 3 things. Maybe I'll just group them together and call this the cylinder group. Great. Okay, now what's great about Photoshop is if you really wanted to play around with your let's move this down here, move this up to here. If you want to think about things like symmetry and layout, you can group things. So now I can move this group around, and I can Alt click drag on the group and drag out a whole another set, right? So that's just something to think about. So now that you've got one, all I've done is draw one of these cylinders, but I could do things like do Control T, right click, and flip this horizontally. So this flips it along the horizontal axis. So now they're symmetrically aligned here. By the way, when I move it around, you see that these little pink lines appear and little labels. These are called smart guides. I'm going to go ahead and turn those off so that you guys don't get confused, but they are useful, and I would recommend you check it out. But I'm going to turn them off because I don't want to get you guys thinking that they're have more meaning than they do. Right? They basically just take existing elements on the screen and show you sort of a alignment guide so that you can line things up perfectly. Alright, so I'm not going to keep that group there, but you see I have my horizon line still there, and that's fine. Don't worry about that. The fact that it appears behind and through the outline, we'll be correcting that in a minute. So go ahead and draw. Let's get another shape going, and notice how I'm really just using the default round brush here at a small size. I'm not really concerned right now about my brushes. I'm just looking to create a composition. So let's draw a cone. Oops, see what I did? I am on the gradient layer, so let's undo that. And let's make a new layer, because this will be our cones group. So same process, just hand draw, free draw the line work. And you can see if I hold shift, it does tell you on the screen, you get a little label, and that means that I can draw a straight line, and it will render out a perfectly straight line. So here we go. Looking good. Great. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to Alt drag and Control T on my cone layer and kind of make an arrangement here. So we'll have maybe a small one way off in the distance, sort of at the edge there. Alright, so maybe we're trying to say something about, industry and forests, right? Like the composition can now start to have some sort of take on some sort of meaning and symbolism. Great. Alright, so now we've got let's group our cones. Great. Okay, we are in business. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put a layer below both of these groups, and I'm just going to start painting really light, probably the lightest color. Yeah, so go ahead and just grab your round brush, gonna make it a little bit bigger, and I'm going to also take my brush and bring the hardness down. I'm accessing these in the brush tip shape under brushes. So now it's a little bit more soft. So I'm going to go ahead and just fill in all these shapes really fast, all the way so that we no longer have to worry about that horizon line. and that we are starting to see what our composition, in the very earliest phase is going to look like. So you can see that we still are going to have an issue with the lines where the geometry intersects. That's okay. We will deal with that. But I can promise you that if you don't have a tablet, you could still do this. I just am much more at ease with the brush, with working with some sort of tablet device. It doesn't have to be fancy. All right. Great. So now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'll just put a layer above these groups just in case I want to go back and mess with it. I'm going to go ahead and paint in, the lines that shouldn't be visible. Okay, great. There, don't want to get rid of that one. And at some point I will probably go ahead and merge these different outline groups. But for now, let's go ahead and leave them alone. So we have a layer for behind and a layer in front, which is fine. Okay. So you can see when I turn it off, you can see where we've painted just specific things. Okay. Great. Okay, so now let's determine where's our light going to come from. Well, I guess I would like it to come from this side. So let's draw sort of, just for reference, let's draw some arrows, right? So like that's going to be our directional light. So it kind of goes scattered around, but generally hits the objects from this angle. So we know our shadows are going to be on this side, and our specular elements are going to be on this side, right? So we will have the light at its brightest point on about half or about 50% of the round objects here. So let's go ahead and add another layer. And we'll just call this the shading high, right? Because this is going to be the brightest color. And so we'll do a mid shading, where we'll put our mid values in. And so I'm going to go ahead and just grab, let's see, somewhere around here. And now is where I'm going to play around with, first of all, I don't want very little hardness. I think I might, now let's just keep, let's switch to this brush. And let's go to, let's bring our flow down. About 58% sounds good. Okay, so we're in our mid-level layer. It's above our whites. Let's go ahead and start to shade. And some of these, there we go. Let's shade the non-lit sides of these. See, I'm just doing it real quick and dirty. You can see that we have to do it on this layer as well. Okay. So just to speed things up, I'm going to go ahead and take this layer, move it down, and merge it down. So merge down. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to merge these because I'm happy with this composition. I like it. So I'm going to go ahead and clean up my line work on the actual outlines. So if I turn these off, I can just quickly go in and erase the unnecessary lines, ones I don't want to see, on each of these layers. In fact, I'm just going to merge these layers and call them outline. So let's call them outlines. All right. And that was a leftover group, so I'll just delete that. And so now we can see that we just have these 3 layers. Great. So now we're coming along, right? We have obviously some bleeding out here, right? Like the where we gotta just constantly go back and forth. I'm constantly, when I'm drawing a project like this or working on any sort of concepting, I'm constantly going from really fast work, like where I work really fast and sloppy, to refined and kind of cleaning up steps like this. Like I take breaks and just do some cleanup work. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and we're going to continue to shade these. So let's keep working on our mid-level, but I'll go ahead and grab something maybe a little bit darker, knowing that our darkest area is going to be the area where it's furthest from the light source. That should make sense. And I'm going to go ahead and bring our opacity down, because it looks like the best way to blend stuff is to just fudge the opacity as you're working, right? I usually do a mixing of opacity and blurring just to get rid of those gradient lines. But ultimately, there's more than one way to get results in Photoshop. You could use the multiply blending mode, try to get the hang of it. So if I switch to multiply, maybe bring this down a little bit, because here we go. You can see even though I brought it down, it still does some pretty dramatic light changing. But it also gives it a little bit more of a 3D look. Now I'm going to go ahead and go a little bit of a lighter value, and you see I'm kind of breaking my own rule by not selecting from my swatches here, but still keeping in multiply. I'm going to go ahead and now that I've got a lighter color, I can kind of wrap it around more to the front here. And we're all on the same layer, right? We're still on the same layer. Undo, undo. I didn't like that. All right. So now I'm not going to go much further because I don't want to. There's no need to really do more than this, because I think that if you get this far, it's a lot of refinement. Now obviously I didn't do shadows. I could do that really quickly, just maybe a new layer, and I'm going to leave that one behind the shading high. So I'd probably recommend before doing this, do some low shading. But for now, I'm just going to make a shadows layer. And for this one, let's go ahead and go with the darkest color. And let's see here. I've got, let's get rid of those X's. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and one thing that's useful is to define this breakup with different colors. So if I before you do the shadows, maybe take this area and give it a different hue than the background. I'd probably go with a lighter hue. Not hue, sorry, value. Got hue on my mind. So let's just do, and I'm still in multiply, so let's undo that because that's not going to give us the result we want. But if I just go in and broad paint strokes, and now if I remove this stroke, see now we've got a little bit, feels a little bit more like a a platform or something. So now I'm going to draw my shadows, and I'm just going to rough them in with the dark color here. Bring my brush down, and I haven't even really messed around with brushes at all, which is something you might want to do for your project. So let's figure this out. So this is going to be the cone shape, but it's going to hit this cone here, right? So it's got to probably put that above here. And this one's going to just go straight out. Same over here, and same over here. And you want to add increased level of darkness. I probably will, for shadows, recommend you just go as dark as go as dark as you want, but lean towards darker, and because you can always just dial it back. All right, does that make sense? Here we go. And so that would probably be like shadows there, shadows here. And so that's about it. So let me just take the opacity down a little bit, and I'm not loving the fact that these are at a different angle than these shadows. So I'll probably go back in and correct that. But use your best judgment here. You can see that just quick adjustments on the fly are the way to go. So there we go. So if I zoom out and we turn off, and let's get rid of these. And we probably would keep messing with it. I would probably not call that completely final, but you get the idea. So there we go. There's our rough and dirty mock-up for assignment 1.